Good afternoon, this is Chandra Easton here from Living in Light, starastrologyhealing.com, speaking to you this afternoon about Esoteric Aquarius. The topics that I'll be covering is briefly looking at the age of Aquarius. I'll be looking at the Decans, that's the 3 lots of 10 degrees of the sign of Aquarius. I'll be looking at the constellations that are connected to the sign of Aquarius, the keynotes that are associated with this sign of the zodiac, and last of all, the labour of Hercules that's connected to this talk. This teaching is for those people who are interested in the esoteric or the hidden, the spiritual aspects of the sign of Aquarius. Let's begin. Many people make the mistake of thinking that Aquarius is a water sign, and they do this because the symbol for Aquarius is not an animal, but it's a human carrying a pitcher of water and pouring water out. Whereas in fact Aquarius is one of the air signs, and it governs the group focus. And the waters that come forth from the urn, they're the waters of life. You might remember that the zodiac's divided into different segments, and that the sign of Sagittarius is the beginning of the universal signs. So we've had the tests and trials of Sagittarius, and we're currently in the midst of those in Capricorn. And when we get to the 20th of January, we'll be in Aquarius, and the final of the universal signs will be Pisces, and then that completes the wheel. Now, the reason I decided to talk about the age of Aquarius while we're in the sign of Aquarius is because it's the backdrop. It influences everything. We're at the end of a great year, and a great year is when we have 12 ages, and each age lasts 2,155 years. When you have 12 of those, then you get a great year, and a great year is 25,860 years. So we are at the end of a great year, as well as the end of the age of Pisces. So we're ending a shorter cycle, 2,000 odd year cycle, and a much larger cycle. And there's been a lot of speculation, a lot of discussion around this, particularly as we approached Christmas time, and there was great visibility of the great conjunction. This is Jupiter and Saturn as they aligned in 0 degrees Aquarius. Some people were referring to this as the Bethlehem star for the age of Aquarius, the age of the heart. And so this is the backdrop. This is the theme that we're in, and here we are in the Aquarian phase. Now, every sign of the zodiac has 3 decans, and that's because there are 30 degrees in every sign of the zodiac, and that 30 is divided into 3 groups of 10. So you could say that the 30 days of the sun moving through any sign is divided into 3 groups of 10, and the first 10 days in the Aquarian phase, or the first decan, is governed by Saturn. That's the old ruler of Aquarius. This is before Uranus was discovered. Saturn's the old ruler. So we could expect in those first 10 days, and this is the 20th to the 30th of January, lots of karmic matters and significant decisions that impact us personally, family-wise, nationally, internationally. The second decan is governed by Mercury. And what we're meant to do with Mercury is search for inner truth and move beyond delusion and lies, and search and find the light of illumination. And this particular period, this second decan period, is from the 31st of January through to around about the 9th of February. And of course we're living in a world of misinformation. If a lie is repeated over and over and over enough times, we begin to think it's true. And there's a lot of this has been going on. How long it's been going on? Weeks, months, years, decades. But the forces of materialism, they operate in the realm of lies, whereas the forces of light operate in the realms of truth. But that's not my truth or your truth. This is the higher truth that comes from the heart. And the challenge for humanity, really, in that first week, 10 days of February up till about the 9th of February, is to figure out what's true and what's a lie. And then the third Decan, governed by Venus, and this governs the period the 10th to about the 19th of February, could be the 9th to the 19th, where the purpose of Venus ruling this part of Aquarius is to unite us all and to encourage us to find that which we have in common, to be inclusive. Remembering that the themes in the sign of Aquarius are what's good for the group. Aquarius is the sign of the group, and you could say that the imagery of the human, generally it's a man, but I have some beautiful images of a woman pouring the waters of life from the urn. This represents to me service to the greater good, service to the community, service to the collective. And this is the task and the work for all those who have Aquarius in their chart. Maybe they have an Aquarius rising. Maybe it's the moon in Aquarius. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe you've got Saturn there. Maybe it's there by progression. If you have Aquarius somewhere in your chart, then the challenge is to work through the karma, particularly if you've got planets in that first decan. Strive to find clarity, inner clarity, through the light of Mercury, and find an inclusive nature, an inclusive way of being. You don't have to agree with other people to unite with them and find things you have in common with them. If we all focused upon what it is that separates and divides us, we'd end up with war within ourselves, war within our family, war within the nation. We've got enough of that going on. Let's find what unites us. The sign of Aquarius has three constellations that are prominent, and I'll speak about them one by one. The first is known as Pisces Australis, and I find it very interesting that in the zodiac, the constellations, they tend to overlap. They don't sort of sit neatly in one sign of the zodiac or another. And the constellation of Pisces Australis overlaps Aquarius and Pisces. And of course, what happens is that as we grow in consciousness and become better humans, we generally have a capacity for inclusiveness, and our aura becomes more expanded and more able to embrace difference. That's what I think of when I think of this the sign of Pisces, but it's not two fishes, as in the sign of Pisces. The constellation Pisces Australis is one fish, sometimes referred to as the avatar for the next age, because of course we always have a world teacher who comes to teach humanity. Yeah. And therefore any sort of souls who are, on the higher turn of the spiral and have learned some of the lessons of the earlier signs and are integrating lessons of Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces, they generally have more rapid incarnations and can move quickly through these spiritual tests. So you could say that as humanity is trying to enter the age of Aquarius, the age of the heart, we're having a fairly rapid push along, and no doubt this is being supported. We are being supported and overshadowed by Avataris connected to Pisces Australis. The second of the constellations is Pegasus, and Pegasus represents the higher mind. It represents the Buddhic mind, the intuitional mind, the being able to rise above the lies and the delusions and our own sense of righteousness, what we want to believe, what our opinions are. So those opinions and delusions, they're all the lower vibration of the mind, whereas Pegasus represents the awakened or the intuitive mind. And the third of the constellations associated with Aquarius is Cygnus, the swan. Now I know in the Theosophical tradition, Lady Ananda speaks about the swan as a, well, my interpretation is that that the swan represents stability of the emotional and the astral plane. That's hard enough for individuals to manage, never mind humanity as a whole. But it seems to me that if we're going to rise to the highest vibration of Aquarius, we have to find ways of rising above the astral or the emotional Of course, we've seen all over the televisions in the last few weeks what happens when mob violence and mob emotions are aroused. You know, we get the opposite of the swan. So the swan represents this grace and an eternal peace, I think. It has a first magnitude star within it known as Deneb Aniga. Now, Deneb Aniga represents both the strength and the beauty of the swan, but also the capacity for attack if the swan feels threatened. There's a great deal of beauty, but if you've ever been chased by a swan, you'll know what I'm talking about. You know, they can make a formidable, they're a formidable bird. Some of the teachings talk about the swan being connected to the transcendental, mystical, shamanic teachings around the world egg. And the world egg represents to me humanity in its united form. Right? And therefore, if we were able to be united, and I imagine that this is the purpose of the virus, is to remind us that we breathe the same air in and out through our lungs and through the lungs of the world, the Amazon, and that we need to be united, whether it's on the things that we have in common. We live on this planet together. We breathe the same air. So we need to find ways of accessing wisdom within ourselves and connecting to this energy of Cygnus the Swan. Now, the keynotes of Aquarius, the exoteric keynote, the worldly keynote, if we're operating and working with Aquarius from its lowest vibration, and we're working with the fifth ray, you know, we're working with matter, we're working with the concrete mind, working with facts and figures, and Saturn is the old ruler. Yeah? Although some people are responding to Uranus, but not all. And the keynote for this lower vibration of Aquarius is let desire in form be ruler. And you see, to me, desire is very, very, well, it's not even really astral, it's very physical. I desire this, I desire that, I desire more money, a bigger house, a better car, a greater status. You know, materialism dominates if we allow desire in form to rule us. Whereas from the esoteric keynote, Aquarius is governed by the second ray of love and wisdom. And the higher vibration of Aquarius, love and wisdom, which is ruled by Jupiter, incidentally, the keynote for this is waters of life am I, poured forth for thirsty men. Waters of life am I, poured forth for thirsty men. So there's that wonderful imagery of the dispensing of grace, or healing, or insight and intuition, or peace from the urn of the world's server, because that's what Aquarius is, the world server. I think it was Alice Bailey in her book on Hercules. She writes about the two fixed stars that are associated with law giving, and she speaks about Regulus, which is situated in the 30th degree of Leo. And she talks about Regulus as ruling the law of humanity on a worldly level. And she goes on to speak about Kephus, Kefus, as ruling law on a spiritual level or law on a universal level. I don't know what degree of the sign of Aquarius Kephus is in. I haven't been able to find this, but I know that Regulus is in the sign of Leo. So I'm continuing to investigate that. Okay, I'm going to continue on now and talk about Hercules and the labour that he's approaching, Labour the 11th. And so I'll read from the old commentary here. And I'll read the myth. And the myth for Aquarius, cleansing the Augean stables, is, within the place of peace, the great presiding one poured forth the radiance of his exalted thought. The teacher drew nigh. The single flame must light the other 49, the great presiding one affirmed. So be it, the teacher answered. Having lit his own lamp, Hercules now must bring the light to others. Not long thereafter, the teacher summoned Hercules. 11 times the wheel has turned, and now you stand before another gate. For long you have pursued the light which flickered first uncertainly, then waxed for a steady beacon, and now shines for you like a blazing sun. Turn now your back upon the brightness, reverse your steps, go back to those for whom the light is but a transient point, and help them make it grow. Direct your steps to Augeas, whose kingdom must be cleansed of ancient evil. I have spoken. And so forth went Hercules through gate the 11th in search of Augeas the king. And as he approached the realm where Augeas was the ruler, a horrid stench that made him faint and weak assailed his nostrils. For years, he learned, King Augeas had never cleared away the dung his cattle left within the royal stables. Then, too, the pastures were so amply dunged no crop could grow. In consequence, a blighting pestilence was sweeping through the land, wreaking havoc with human lives. Wow. We have a blighting pestilence sweeping through the lands at the moment. It is wreaking havoc within human lives. This pestilence in the realm of King Augeas was because the dung of the cattle had never been cleaned up. To the palace then went Hercules and sought out Augeas. Informed that Hercules would cleanse the stenchy stables, Augeas displayed distrust and disbelief. You say that you will do this mighty task without reward? The king declared suspiciously. I have no faith in those who make such boasts. Some cunning plan you have contrived, O Hercules, to take my throne from me. Of men who seek to serve the world without a recompense, I have not heard. At this point, though, I'd welcome any fool who sought to help. But a bargain must be struck, lest I be chided as a foolish king. If you, within a single day, shall do what you have promised, 1/10 of my great flock of cattle shall be yours. But if you fail, your life and fortune will be in my hands. Of course, I do not think you can fulfil your boast, but try you may. So here's the king. He says, what's in it for you? Don't trust you, but okay, do your darndest, see if you can clean up this stench. I think the stench has been there for 30 years. And if you manage to do it, then you will get 1/10 of the cattle. So the numbers here are interesting. 30 is made up of 10 lots of 3. 3 is the number of humanity, of the Holy Spirit. Yeah? It governs gold, the world, matter on some level. So 10 times. 10 is a number of completion. 10 times humanity. So this sounds a bit like the eons. I relate this to the great year, the ending of not only the age of Aquarius, but the age of the great year. And we have filth that has accumulated. Yeah? And we have Hercules, who is the world disciple, becoming the world initiate, has been given the task. He's been laughed at, and his motivation has been called into question. The king thinks he's doing it for his own ends, but he's been promised that if he can cleanse the stench, then 1/10 of the cattle, the goods, will be his. Well, I don't know what 1/10 of humanity's goods would be if enough of us could cleanse the stench that has been there for at least 2,155 years. But I can see lots of parallels. We clearly have a pestilence. Yeah? Let's continue to read the myth. Hercules then left the king. He wandered through the blighted place and saw a cart go by, piled high with dead, the victims of the pestilence. We certainly have carts of the dead, victims of the pestilence. 2 rivers, he observed, the Alpheus and the Peneus, 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 flowed quietly nearby. Standing on the banks of one, the answer to his problem flashed upon his mind. 2 rivers. With might and main he laboured. By great exertions he succeeded in diverting both these streams from courses they had followed for decades. The Alpheus and the Peneus were made to pour their waters through the dung-filled stables of King Augeas. The rushing torrents swept away the long accumulated filth. The realm was purged of all its fetid murk. Within a single day the task impossible had been performed. So here's a go. Hercules stands on the rivers, on the bank of the river. Yeah? So we've got water as the cleansing agent, but not just one lot of water, 2 rivers. Yeah? So somehow or other there is a pestilence that has been created by humanity through at least 3 cycles, 3 times 10, 30 years. This is 3 ages, however long we've created our pestilence. 3 decades, 3 centuries, who knows. And nature will be used to cleanse it. Now, I immediately start to think about the La Nina effect and how the climatologists are saying we can expect a lot of water and a lot of rain and a lot of flooding. Yeah? And we've certainly seen a little bit of that just in the last month or so. I think there's been cyclonic activity. I think it's still flooding in North Queensland. We have cyclonic activity out in the Pacific. Yeah? We have rain events predicted. And Hercules, to cleanse this pestilence, yeah, we think about it as our pandemic. We need to harness water. Very interesting. And he successfully does it. Nature was used, the 2 rivers, to cleanse the problems created by humanity. In this myth, it was the cattle. So I wonder who are the cattle in our world. Is this the lower vibration of humanity who are acting like cattle in their animal nature? I don't know. When Hercules, quite satisfied with this result, returned to Augeas, the latter scowled. "You have succeeded by a trick," King Augeas cried out in rage. "The rivers did the work, not you. It was a ruse to take from me my cattle, a plot against my throne. Rewards you shall not have. Go get you hence, I cut down your stature by a head." Wow. So he's quite paranoid, this king. He still, even when the evidence is there before his eyes, that the dung, the pestilence has been cleansed, he still thinks that someone's out to get his throne and his cattle. He's worried about his material assets. The angry king thus banished Hercules and bade him never more set foot within his realm on penalty of sudden death. So there's the world disciple, the world initiate, labouring with the help of nature to cleanse a pestilence that has blighted the land. There's no thanks, yeah? And in fact he's threatened with death. Having performed the task assigned, the Son of Man, who also was the Son of God, went back to him from whom he came. A server of the world you have become. Okay, so it's not just a disciple, he's a world server, a world disciple. The teacher said when Hercules drew nigh, "You have gone on by going back. You have come to the house of light by yet another path. You have spent your light that the light of others might shine. The jewel that the 11th labour gives is yours forevermore." This is the task of the Aquarian. You can only proceed by going back. You have gone on by going back. Shared your light. This is what we need to do. A lot of humanity are lost in darkness. If you have any light within yourself, if you have gathered or experienced light, you cannot progress unless you share it. This is the task. So King Augean, who was the son of Neptune, was sitting in squalor. It took an initiate to come and to harness the energies of nature, the rivers of life, Now the two rivers, esoterically, one of them is the waters of life. I refer to that as the line of will. Let's call it the Shambhala energy coming through rays 1, 3, 5 and 7. We need to call upon the divine will, the waters of life, to assist humanity who are stuck in their own pestilence. We also need to call forth and utilise the waters of love. This is rays 2, 4 and 6. So we need to work with strength and conviction and power and spiritual invocation, and also generosity and compassion and forgiveness and tolerance. The waters of life and the waters of love. This is the only way we can remove the barriers. Humanity have built many, many barriers to the point that we are living in our own pigsty. We have forgotten that we are stardust. And we need the waters of life and the waters of love. Yeah? Divine invocation and spiritual generosity and compassion. We also have to allow nature to assist us in the cleansing. How will this occur? Through fire, earth, air or water, we don't know, but nature will be involved. And for this task, there is no thanks, there is no praise, there's only scorn and ridicule and threats upon one's life. Nevertheless, the task is well done. So if you expect that other people will agree with you or believe you or thank you for any acts of generosity, forget it. Yeah? There's the task, the completion of the tasks that have landed in your lap. The benefit from that is that you know it's your task and you need to do it. There's no outer acknowledgement from others, there's just work to be done. So if you're holding light that has come to you from your soul, from the Holy Ones, then it's not for you alone, it's for your group, for your street, for your neighbourhood, for your family, for others in need, known and unknown. How can and where can it be shed? In as many ways as possible, from the heart, from a higher perspective. We live in interesting times. It's so